Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is Corey Wolff. He is here to celebrate the journey of an acorn. Before Corey joins us, I want to tell you about a really fun way for your kids to learn. It's called Cat's Roblox Challenges and Friends. Let's Go Camping. This is a virtual camp that is offered by our friend Kat Blount. Kat Blount is a wonderful children's author. She has been featured here on the podcast in the past, and she wants to invite your kids to visit Camp Catawaka, where you will have fun and thrive with fellow campers in this week-long Roblox experience. Now, what Kat has done is she's using the Roblox gaming platform to develop really cool learning experiences for small groups of kids. It's secure. It's only those kids that have signed up with their parents, and the kids are aged 10 to 12 that will have access. Kat is online playing with the kids. The kids have lots of fun, and they'll also learn a number of really important life skills like communication, team building, listening and attention, management, budgeting, problem solving, critical thinking, following directions, memory recall, socialization. Socialization is so important right now, especially when kids aren't able to spend time with their friends. Check it out today. Go to outschool.com/teachers/cat-blount, BLOUNT. So that's outschool.com/teachers/cat-blount. And find out about Camp Catawaka and all the fun your kids can have. Joining us on the line right now from the great state of New Jersey. He is an author. He's also a teacher. And he's the author of an award-winning middle grade and YA novel called The Journey of an Acorn. Please welcome to the show, Corey Wolff. Corey, how are you? I'm
great. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for being here. Why don't we begin by you telling us about The Journey of an Acorn? What's this story all about?
Well, it's about an acorn. It's about an acorn that wants to separate from an oak tree, but the tree won't let the acorn go. And rather than nurturing the acorn, it takes advantage of it and uses the acorn to satisfy its own needs. So although the acorn eventually breaks free from the oak tree's hold, it faces many challenges from that trauma it experienced early in life. But despite these difficulties, it manages to persevere and take responsibility for its own growth. And not only does it help itself, but it at the end, it guides its own acorns on their own journey into the unknown.
This is a pretty heavy topic.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, it's really written in rather simple language, but the ideas are very compelling, the themes, and I really thought that these themes are important because I think a lot of kids go through adversity and trauma, and that I want them to know that there's hope out there, that they can pull it together, and that not only can they turn it around and rise above the ashes, but that when they get older, they could even help their own children and have each generation be better.
Mm. You know, obviously with the name of the podcast, the Reading with Your Kids podcast, one of the things we're all about is inspiring families to read more together. I have the feeling that if there's a kid out there that's experiencing this kind, well, we got to call it what it is, this kind of abuse, and something that you said was really kind of shook me, that the oak tree that was holding on to this acorn and was doing it for very selfish reasons. And I think that that's what's going on with a lot of kids who are being abused. I can't imagine that a parent in that kind of situation that is, either consciously or unconsciously abusing their kids and taking advantage of them for selfish reasons. I'm not imagining they're going to want to sit down and read this book with their kids.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I think that this book can also be very successful in schools. And I think that even if students read them, I think it could be successful in schools. I think even if students read them and they're not going through abuse, they could have more empathy for others. And I think teaching empathy is important because often students that get bullied, students that are made fun of or treated harshly, it's the student that gets up and misbehaves and maybe does some behaviors that are like antisocial. Well, there's a lot going on with that child. And I think if we stop and take a look at what are the reasons why this child is doing this. I mean, when people are hurting, they lash out. When people are hurting, they withdraw. And I think that we could understand, hopefully this book will also help people understand that people are maybe not what they seem on the surface, and that we could have a little bit more perhaps understanding and empathy. Sometimes people have a disability even, and you wouldn't know that at first, but that could be the reason they're behaving the way they do. Someone could not get inside someone's personal space and, realize maybe that person is on the autism spectrum or something, right? So I think that this book has a place for also helping to teach empathy. And I think adults could also look at this book and perhaps start to reflect on how they are teaching. Look, I think a lot of times people may feel helpless. I don't think people are bad. People that abuse other people are hurt, and they want to hurt others. And I think that they could still benefit from improving their lives. And I think this book could do that in some small way. It's possible.
Yeah, I agree. All those things that you were mentioning, we've talked a lot here in the podcast about how important it is for kids to develop that empathy. And we've talked a lot about how, that helping kids learn empathy is one of the great benefits of reading together and sitting down and talking about the story together. And I'm imagining that co-reading this book with either your middle grade kids or your high school kids, and talking about it would absolutely be a wonderful experience for a family. I'm wondering what inspired you. Was this from a personal experience, or is this something, were you inspired by seeing kids come in and out of your classroom who experienced some type of abuse?
Absolutely. I started off teaching in 1999. I was in East Flatbush in Brooklyn, and I really had grown up in pretty much a predominantly middle class white area of Long Island, and then I ended up working in East Flatbush, and it was a different culture there, and it was a really great experience for me. I feel that I really, I wanted to help. It's almost like a trite story in the sense of teacher goes in to try to help, and he's actually changes as a result. But it's true. I mean, I really did learn a lot as a person. But yeah, a lot of the kids are going through a lot of things. A lot of the students I taught, there was a good amount that were, in group homes and that were in foster families and had problems with, parent in jail and, they went through a lot of hardship. So I think that's true. But I think that what really gave me the idea was I read The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein, and I was just so blown away at the simplicity of that book and the power of the love that was not returned. And it just blew me away. And I just thought to myself, I want to do something so simple like this where I could really give a powerful message. And I decided to, obviously in there, it's the tree who's completely giving. And then the boy is not. But, in this one, it's a completely different dynamic, but I still wanted to have the power and the simplicity there, the symbolism.
Yeah. It is very powerful. And one of the things I love about what you said earlier on is that you're hoping that a kid who may be in this type of abusive situation can read this book and get some hope from it to not only turn their lives around, but to stop the cycle of abuse, because that's something that we hear about a lot. A lot of parents who are abusive were abused themselves as they were kids, and their parents were abused before that. And it's just, there's so many families where this cycle is just repeated over and over and over again. And I'm really happy that that's one of the things that you hope that your book does, is to help kids break that cycle and to have some hope.
Yes, definitely. And at the end of the book, the Acorn gives his it gives its life lessons to its little acorns, and because it can't, it can't go and travel with them. I mean, it's planted in the earth, and they need to go and experience the great unknown as part of their own journey, and so the acorn gives the advice that it learned through hard life lessons, and it's different now through all of the hardship. It came at some type of acceptance and love, and it tries to bring that forth into the world, and so I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. It's interesting that you're on the show at this time, because my wife and I, we have this beautiful property here in the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville that I've talked about here on the podcast a lot. And we have this beautiful oak tree in the middle of our property that is just huge and absolutely gorgeous. And it's home to hundreds, if not thousands, of creatures, birds of all different colors and shapes and sizes. And it was a tree that my kids played on and swung from. And it's at the point now where we're going to have to take it down because it's dangerous. It's time for it to come down. And as you're talking about this tree and the acorn and the relationship, it just, my mind works in strange ways, but I was just, reminded of how sad we are that we're going to have to say goodbye to this tree. And it just reminds me that authors, especially authors who are starting out, they face all sorts of challenges. One of the things that I heard was that it took you over 10 years to write this book. What was going on? Why did it take you so long to write this book?
Yeah, well, I had a lot of notes that I started thinking of. After I read The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein, I had all of these ideas about this acorn and oak trees, and I took really, I thought, really good notes, but I couldn't quite string it into a narrative. I couldn't really put it together. And I think at the time I didn't have enough life experience. And it was really wasn't until I became a father. And at that time, I mean, thank God I had the notes and I put them away and I was able to find them again. And I just started thinking, about my relationship with my children. And then I just was like, I think that I could finish this book, this children's book. And I went back, I started rereading my notes, and I was able to finish do the end of the story. And so it took a while. I had to really go through some growth, as a father. And then I was able to do it. And, I'm glad I'm glad that I don't mind that it took 10 years. It was worth it.
Yeah. I mentioned at the top of the podcast that you are a teacher, and you teach high school kids. I'm wondering if any of your students had a chance to read the book and what their reactions might have been.
Thank you for asking me that. I was really surprised that, I found out that some of my students were taking the book, not like they took it against my knowledge. I mean, they were bringing it to other parts of the school, and they were reading it aloud and talking about it. And that really warmed my heart. And then I had students come and ask me, who I didn't expect. They said, hey, I would love to get a copy of it. And so that really, really felt good. It felt good to, that they enjoyed it, and that they connected with it in some way. Mm-hmm. And that made me feel really, really good.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Were any surprised that, Mr. Wolff was a children's author?
Yeah, I think they were surprised because it just kind of came out as my first book. So, they didn't really have any idea. I just all of a sudden I said, hey, I wrote this book. And, actually one of the other teachers brought it up. He was more excited about it than I was, which was great. I was like, okay, I was, like a little bit not wanting to put it out there at first, I was a little hesitant. And, one of my colleagues at school was like, hey, Mr. Wolff wrote a book. Isn't that amazing? And that's what happened.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. We're talking right now at the beginning of the new school year, and it is going to be a school year like no other. All across the country, different districts are opening in different ways. Some are virtual, some are in person, but different, and some are hybrid, where kids are coming every other day. How are things where you are? You don't have to, talk, specifically about your school if there are privacy issues, but, what's your feeling going into this school year? How can we help our kids make the best of this very unusual and, in some ways, frightening kind of situation?
Well, I'm going to kind of just give a general answer,
Sure.
Which is, I think that adults and children alike are under much more. There are many more stressors now because of the situation, right? So, if you're like, for example, my son is completely virtual instruction, so that requires a lot of changes, right, and a lot of fluidity and. Who knows when the school will start and, how that will all kind of pan out. So I would just say try to do some things that are good stress relieving things. Exercise, go play on the playground, take your kids out on the playground. If you're an adult, just try to do something that you enjoy, some type of activity, whatever it is that calms you down. Because, people are under all kinds of pressure, financial pressure with the situation and, with their kids. They may have to be home with their kids. And, people are facing a lot more, I think, mental health, concerns now, especially after like 6 months of this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. And I like your advice. There's not a whole lot that we can do as individuals to change the situation other than to take care of ourselves and our kids. And I think it's really, really important. And yeah, there isn't anything that we can do necessarily about the pandemic or opening things up, but we can take care of ourselves and we can remember what it is, what things bring us joy, what things bring our kids joy, and hopefully one of the things that brings you joy is spending time reading with your kids.
It is. Sometimes my kids fall asleep in my arms as I read to them, and that's a wonderful thing that, it's just a beautiful experience that I'm just so happy that I have the opportunity to have that.
Yeah. Hey, this is, and you might not be aware, but I'm just curious. One of the things that we've heard about here, I don't know I think it might have been Pam Allen, who's a vice president over at Scholastic. One of the things she talked about is, kids who are read to, they begin school, either preschool, kindergarten, they begin school hearing almost 1 million more words than the kids who weren't read to. And, and then when they start school together, it's not like those kids who were read to kind of stop. They continue to grow and continue to progress. As a high school teacher, do you see kids that are struggling with literacy and reading that you can almost say to yourself, wow, this kid probably wasn't read to when he or she was growing up?
Well, I work at a special needs high school.
Okay. Uh-huh.
So it's different because, you're dealing with, students, and they have they have a variety of, issues. Maybe I have students that are highly intelligent, but they have maybe a specific learning disability. Yep. Maybe they have difficulty with reading text, but they're really good with listening. Mm-hmm. They're really good with just auditory comprehension. And they have a sharp mind, so it really depends. I mean, I think that when I taught general ed, you could definitely see a difference. I mean, undoubtedly, you could see, and you could tell the students that were being read to.
Yeah.
Because they come in and, they're scanning text. They already have a lot of strategies that they just know as readers, mm-hmm. But there's students that there aren't readers, they're really at a loss.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. And it's unfortunate that, to be honest with you, there's students that are in 11th grade, and I'm not saying this at my school,
sure,
but I would say a lot of schools in the country, a lot of schools where there's poverty, that are high need areas. Maybe students in 11th grade might be reading at a 6th grade level.
Yeah.
I would say that's probably pretty much more common than you'd think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I've shared this on the podcast in the past. Before becoming a performer, I was a social worker, and I was working in the juvenile justice system here in Massachusetts. And one of my greatest failings, I feel, and I was told that I did such a great job with this one particular client. He came out of a secure facility, and we got him into a job, and helped him, get himself his own apartment. He was taking care of himself, and then he got married, and then I discovered after he had graduated from our program, my time working with him was over. He invited me to go to his wedding, and someone handed him a card, and he handed it to me. He said, "Hey, can you read this to me?" And it was at that moment I realized that he couldn't read, and that was something that I didn't pick up on. And to this, and I tried to get him some help and put him into some programs, but it was like one of those things, like, wow, that's something that I should have been aware of. That's something that I should have addressed immediately while we were trying to help him get jobs in apartments and all that other kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, he probably was hiding it. Obviously, he was embarrassed,
yeah.
And I think at that point, I think it's it may be easier to just kind of pretend like you can read and just try to hide it. Mm-hmm. Because it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
But obviously, I could see how that could happen. If you're in a large school, you may have some kind of issue that's undiagnosed perhaps, or no one's reading to you, and it could happen. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess, if you're listening, if you're a parent out there, if you're listening to the show, then I assume that you're reading with your kids. But, there may be one of your kids' friends may not have that same opportunity. And if you notice and you have a suspicion that one of your kids' friends is struggling in school, and you can maybe whisper in someone's ear to help that kid get some help, that might be a big present for that child.
Yeah, and I just think, too, that between parents and children, I mean, you could talk to your children about, how do you think that the tree should have treated the acorn, and how, what do you see as some of the difficulties the acorn went through because of the tree? Like if you were the tree, what might you have said instead of that, And also at the end of the story, the acorn actually helps the tree. The acorn actually helps heal the tree as best it can. And by doing so, it actually heals itself.
Yeah.
And that's really for me, a very moving aspect of the book.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's something that if you get into just helping others, and how helping others could be very rewarding. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, Corey, I definitely think folks are going to want to check out The Journey of an Acorn. This is your debut book. Are there more books coming from Corey Wolff?
I actually have, two that I'm pretty close to finishing, and I'm intending in the spring, this spring 2021, to release them. One's about a little monster named Mikey. Mikey McMonsterson goes to school. He doesn't like to scare people, and so he gets made fun of by the other monsters where he lives in Monsterville. And he runs away, and he ends up hiding out under this bed of this little boy, and they become friends. And he takes his new monster friend to school. So that's a picture book, and I'm working on that with an illustrator. And then I have another book, which is really an epic poem. That would be more of a middle school book. It's about 100 pages, and it's a story called Sweet Pea of Monsterville, and it's just about a little monster and he's a prince, and he does not live up to his mother's expectations of being a proper scary monster.
All right.
And, yeah.
We definitely want to check those out. Hey, where can everybody go to connect with you online and to find out more about The Journey of an Acorn, and also be the first ones to find out when these new books are available?
Well, it's you could purchase The Journey of an Acorn on Amazon, and you could also go to my website, which is Corey S. Wolff at WordPress.com.
Excellent. And Wolff is spelled with 2 F's, correct?
That's correct.
Yes. All right. We've had a great time speaking to the author of The Journey of an Acorn, Corey Wolff. Corey, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Jed. Take care.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Melanie Hall. She is the illustrator of A Winter Walk in the City. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so very wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Corey Wolff. Be sure to check out The Journey of an Acorn. I also want to thank my team, starting with my incredible producer, Fatima Khan, my awesome author, Ambassador Peggy Cotto. I want to thank my amazing daughter. And, of course, I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. But most of all, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And, as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.